Do 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 do. Do 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 do. The one thing that I see, whether it be Nikon people or Fuji people or Sony people, that confuses the ever-loving crap out of the photography community, I mean, it confuses the shit out of them. They really don't get it, is these two words, design constraints. The other one is actually economic constraints. There are countless examples. I'm going to give you a few in no particular order because people don't understand that. Maybe it's just because I've been taking so many damn cameras apart and lenses, and people just don't realize certain things. Yeah, they just don't realize it. One of which people say, well, the new X Pro 3 must be very expensive because it's made out of titanium. Well, from Fujifilm's own video, for example, those are titanium stampings. Yeah, which is fine. Yeah, stampings. If Fujifilm were to machine that top plate and bottom plate out of titanium, it would take forever and the camera would cost a fortune. But as Fujifilm showed there, and they're in full production on that friggin' camera, they're stampings. In other words, a flat piece of titanium plating, and it is press fitted, and of course it is cut, and there's a very, very, very little bit of machine grinding, as they showed in their video, but it's stampings. Okay, so that eliminates out the cost issue. Yeah. As far as cast magnesium versus stamping stuff out of titanium, I think the cost is negligible. Per unit, it's probably far less than 50 bucks, if that. Titanium is pretty damn expensive, yeah, but I mean, it's a lot less than it used to be. I don't know where they're buying their sheeting from. Okay, that's an economic constraint. The other thing, and this is not about the Fujifilm X Pro 3, it's just not at all. And I've just seen so many comments like this, and the comments exist over many different cameras, Nikon and Fuji. Well, I don't know why the hell they stuck. If you don't like, the down swiveling LCD display, that's fine. The logic behind that is, very straightforward. People say, I don't know why they couldn't have stuck this sort of, screen on the camera. Well, behind this screen, there's this neat little thing called a metal bracket, and you see, while you could physically do something, the point is that if you did that, it would look ugly. And not only would it jack up the price, it would actually alter the form factor of what something is. And you could see that in the actual images of the new sort of hybrid screen with the back top display, which is an ink display, which, by the way, sucks almost no power. People were complaining about that little ink display sucking. Those ink displays suck almost no power. There's two hinges at the bottom. You see, the only way, because the X Pro 2, okay, does not have a removable or tiltable or swivel screen, to keep the same form factor, okay, of that camera, that is the only sort of display that they could have stuck on there. They could not stick of any design, whether that be Panasonic, Nikon, Sony, any sort of articulating screen, because that meant that the hinges would interfere with the main board and you can't do that without actually changing and thickening the camera and changing the actual design aesthetics of the actual body itself. It can't be done. Just for example, like when the X-T3 came, I thought, oh my god, it doesn't have an IBIS mech in it. Well, here's another design constraint, the X-T3. Well, oh crap, I've been waiting for the X-T3, but there's no IBIS mech in there. Great. Now, let's assume that Fujifilm has stuck an IBIS mech in this. Necessitatively, they would have been constrained to thicken this camera up by a minimum of 6 millimeters, okay? And then everybody would have bitched about how thick it is. And also, too, on top of that, it would have jacked the price up several $100s. They wanted to stay competitive with a lot of people. When the X-T3 came out, the price was unbelievable. Still is unbelievable. But by sticking the IBIS mech in there, they would have had to increase the thickness of the camera, which would have pissed a lot of people off, and they would have necessitatively, yes, because IBIS mech requires a lot of hand assembly, due to the labor and the actual mechanism itself, they would have had to charge a few $100s more. That's an economic and a design constraint all in. Why don't people get this stuff? And this is not about Fujifilm or people complaining about that or their camera. This is an issue with, and like Sony. Sony's got a heating issue. I hear their new camera is actually going to have a pass-through vent with a fan in it. The downside of that is that it will suck in humidity right into the camera. Actually, Sony rumors said that like a specific Panasonic camera, which has a fan and it's got an intake and an output vent, yeah, to transport air, because you know Sony's have an overheating issue. And that's wonderful. It solves one problem and it creates another. Middle finger perfectly. And that, of course, is sucking in humidity. But the reason for that is Sony likes to stick 10 pounds of poo in a 5-pound bag. And the cameras, they overheat. So they're going to solve that by sticking in a venting system to dissipate the heat. That's wonderful. It'll solve the overheating issue, and it'll create another issue of sucking in humidity, which you don't want in a camera, which is the #1 cause of camera self-destruction. Corrosion, internal corrosion. Not due to invasive weather, like direct rain, but pervasive. Yeah, so these are design constraints. People say, well, what about the next iteration of the GFX 50S or 50R? It's like, well, this camera's already pretty thick. It's not that thick. It's a medium format camera, for Christ's sakes. But you can't stick an IBIS mech in this because it creates a design constraint and a cost constraint. The cost constraint is kind of obvious. Yeah, in the next iteration of this GFX 50R, whenever that is, 2 years in the future, they would have to make it thicker. And I don't know the exact dimensions of how much. It's more than 6 millimeters on the medium format because the voice coils are huge. Voice coils on the GFX 100 are rather large. Probably somewhere around 8 millimeters thicker. That would make this camera really thick. It would be a brick. It would really be a brick. And the price would be a lot higher. I don't know what you think these people at Nikon and Canon and Fujifilm are doing in Japan, but there is design, and it has to pass through all these windows, or little portals, if you will, yeah? It has to pass through the design constraint portal. This doesn't look right, does it? Design constraint portal, yeah? It has to pass through the cost-benefit analysis. Like, we're competing with this camera, we have to keep it within this price range. So if we do that, we can't add all this fancy frou-frou. So there's a design constraint window, and then there's a cost constraint window. Practicality. How much can we sell it for? You know, you can make like the best camera that's got everything, but if it's astronomically priced, people are going to be like, screw that, that's too much money. It's really nice. It's like a Lamborghini. You know, nobody really denies the quality and workmanship of a Lambo, right? Or a McLaren, a Bentley. Yeah, that's nice, but that shit's expensive. Can't afford it. These cameras are not Leica. They're not pointed at Leica customers. However, the new X Pro 3 is pointed at Leica customers. They're pointed at the average consumer. And they're about delivering the biggest bang for the buck. And you know, what's the bitch about on the XT3? It's still got the same slim form factor. You couldn't stick an IBIS mech in this. Sure you can! You can stick an IBIS mech in this. The answer to that is you're half right, but you're 100% wrong. You could stick an IBIS mech in this, but it would be thicker, and people would bitch and complain, and it'd be more expensive, and people would bitch and complain. That's just called the limitations of physics. There's only so much stuff you could jam in the same dimensions, right? Right. So all these people like talking about, why do they stick that crazy-ass screen on the X Pro 3? It's got 2 little hinges on the bottom that are basically on the back plate, on the bottom plate, excuse me. Yeah, it's actually attached not to the bottom plate, but the sub-chassis or the internal chassis of the camera. That's because the original X Pro 2 didn't have a removable flippy tilty screen at all. To keep those same dimensions, you could not my opinion, fact, stick this kind of display on it. Because this requires thickening up the camera due to this plate right here. Yeah, actually tilt it out this way. See this plate right here? Yeah. Requires a different sort of hinge mechanism. That means the back of the LCD would stick out. So far people will be like, what sort of obnoxious holy hell is this crazy crap? The screen on the X Pro 3, which would be like this, sticks out a mile. There's what you can do, and there's also what falls outside of the parameters of the design constraints that are envisioned by the creators of these cameras. You're not thinking. There's so many people, I just keep seeing this over and over again, they're just not thinking clearly. It's like, you could do that, but it'd be too expensive and people would bitch and complain. Or they'd have to make it a lot thicker. And then a lot of people would complain, why the hell is this damn camera so thick? It's like, you wanted IBIS, didn't you? Yeah, but I didn't think it'd make the camera thicker. It's like, well, where the hell are they going to put it then? You know, you can't fit the same crap inside the same dimensions physically, length, width, depth of the camera. You can't add a wholly new mechanism, which, you know, is on a free-floating IBIS platform. You can't do that and have the same dimensions of the camera. Have to make it thicker. Yeah, but I didn't want that. You did say you wanted IBIS really bad. Yeah, but I didn't think it'd make it thicker. It's like, why not? That's like someone stupidly saying, I like to eat donuts and gain 40 pounds, but I don't want to change, you know, the size of my pant waist. You know, I still want to wear, you know, my 34-inch, not that I wear 34, I still want to wear the same size pants, but I want to be okay with eating donuts and gaining 40 pounds. It's like, well, that shit's never going to happen, is it? And the answer to that is no, it's not possible. It's not physically possible. What is it about that people don't get? I just keep seeing people saying stupid stuff like that everywhere about every camera. It's just dumb. Every design of every camera from every camera company has to pass through design constraints. Is like, well, that's too much labor, too much time to build it. Therefore, the camera would be really expensive. Once it falls through the design constraints, then it has to fall through the cost-benefit analysis. It was like, well, are people going to buy it at this price point? Because our competition kind of has all the same stuff, and it's at this price point. It's like, yeah, we could do that, but it'd cost a lot more money because it's more labor and more parts, and then it wouldn't sell very well because everybody would be like, well, I can get this camera from this camera company. It's a lot cheaper. You see where I'm going? This stuff is like so simple. Why should I be discussing it? The only reason I'm making a video about this fact is because nobody seems to get it. Nobody gets it. Yeah. It's not like labor is getting any cheaper. Well, it does. I mean, this is the reason why several camera companies, you know, are outsourcing their lenses to China and Thailand and stuff. It's like, well, we want to add more stuff, but we're gonna have to reduce our cost point. Our cost point per unit, cost per unit. It's like, well, the only way we're going to do that is move the facilities from Japan to China. And that's what a lot of them do. Yeah? So everybody says, not made in Japan, anyways, it's made in China. China. Right there says made in China. Did I make my point? Oi.